6 days before the Alaska cruise I had paid $38,000 for, my son called to tell me my cabin now belonged to his mother-in-law. "Vivian doesn't think you're stable enough for the trip," Trent said. I was standing in the bedroom I had shared with his mother for 38 years. On the bed lay Nora's red wool scarf, the one she had bought for Alaska before cancer made our first trip impossible. "Who changed the booking?" I asked. Trent paused. "We made a family decision, without the person paying for it. Dad, this is exactly why Vivian is worried. You're becoming combative." 20 minutes later, a woman from Harbor Grove Memory Support called to ask whether I preferred the front or back seat of the van they were sending to my house. "For what?" "Your cognitive evaluation." I had never contacted Harbor Grove. The woman knew my name, my address, the medication episode I had experienced 6 months earlier, and the exact morning the cruise ship would leave port. She also had Trent listed as the person responsible for payment. That was when I stopped thinking. My son had only stolen a vacation. Someone was building a reason I should not be allowed to manage the life I had left. The woman introduced herself as Elena Park, an intake coordinator. She sounded careful rather than suspicious. The way people sound when they believe a family member is trying to help and do not yet realize they have stepped into an argument. "Did I consent to this evaluation?" I asked. She checked her record. "The referral came from your son. We were told the family would discuss consent with you before transport. They have not. Then the evaluation cannot proceed until that is resolved. When is the van scheduled?" She gave me the date and time. It was the morning the ship was due to leave Seattle. "Please record that I directly refused transport and did not request your services." Elena agreed. She would cancel the pickup unless I later gave consent. I asked her to preserve the intake record and send me written confirmation of my refusal. "Mr. Alder," she said, "I want to be clear that Harbor Grove has not made any finding about you. I understand. I'm trying to learn who wanted you to." After the call, I sat on the edge of the bed beside Nora's scarf. 3 years had passed since I lost her, but grief still found practical disguises. It lived in the second coffee cup I no longer filled, the half of the closet I had never reorganized, and the habit of turning toward the passenger seat when I saw something she would have laughed at. Alaska had been her unfinished promise. We booked the first trip after my retirement. Nora bought the scarf because she said every photograph of Alaska seemed to contain either blue ice or red jackets, and she refused to disappear into the scenery. Then the diagnosis came, followed by treatment schedules that made departure impossible. Near the end, she made me promise I would go one day with the family. I had planned this cruise for Trent, Vivian, their daughter Leah, Vivian's mother, and me. I paid for adjoining cabins, travel, and basic dining because I wanted the trip to be a memorial, not a bill divided among relatives. Now Nora's place had been turned into evidence against me, and my place had been given away. I opened the cruise portal. My name was gone from the passenger list. Vivian's mother occupied the cabin I had chosen for Nora and me. Vivian's younger brother had been added to the second cabin, while Leah's name was no longer attached to either room. Leah had spent more time beside Nora during her final months than anyone her age should have known how to give. She brought schoolwork to the hospital, learned which tea settled Nora's stomach, and listened when her grandmother spoke about Alaska as if the trip still waited somewhere beyond treatment. If this cruise belonged emotionally to anyone besides me, it belonged to Leah. Yet the two people closest to Nora's promise had been removed while Vivian's family took our places. The changelog showed that Trent had removed me 3 days before calling. That detail mattered. He had not made a frightened decision during a difficult conversation. He had changed the passengers, waited 3 days, then called to describe the result as concern for my health. Trent had been listed as the reservation coordinator because I trusted him to collect passport information and arrange the family flights. He had used that access to change the people traveling on a trip I had purchased. I verified the record with a cruise line supervisor. Trent's coordinator login had requested both substitutions. No medical document had been submitted, and no employee had decided I was unfit to travel. Would the original timestamp remain in your system if the passengers changed again? I asked. Yes, the supervisor said. The booking history remains attached to the reservation. That answered a question I had not yet admitted I was asking. If Trent later claimed the removal was an urgent response to my behavior, the cruise line would still show that he had acted days before informing me. My credit card remained attached to both cabins. The fare and basic dining were already prepaid, but spa appointments, excursions, alcohol, specialty restaurants, and other on-board charges would still flow through the card on file. I called Trent again. My card is still attached to the booking. It's easier to leave everything in one place, he said. We can settle up later. You removed me because I cannot be trusted to travel, but you trust me to pay for everyone who replaced me. Dad, don't turn this into a money issue. You turned it into a money issue when you kept my card. His voice became softer, which with Trent usually meant the pressure was becoming more deliberate. Vivian is trying to protect you. You live alone. You forget appointments. After what happened with your medication, we can't pretend nothing has changed. The episode had been real. 6 months earlier, a new prescription interacted badly with a sleep aid. For one confused evening, I called Leah by Nora's name and drove to a pharmacy that had closed years before. My doctor corrected the medication, and the symptoms stopped. Trent was not inventing every fact. He was arranging old facts into a new conclusion. Did you schedule Harbor Grove? I asked. Silence held for 2 seconds. It's only an evaluation. Did you schedule it? Someone has to be responsible before there's a real crisis. And that someone is you. I'm your son. He said it as though the relationship answered the question of consent. When the call ended, I downloaded the passenger manifest, the changelog, every invoice, and the page showing my card attached to the onboard folio. I saved copies in 2 places and printed the original timestamps. For 34 years, I had investigated marine and commercial property losses. Most serious losses did not begin with one dramatic event. They began with small decisions recorded in different systems by people who assumed no one would ever place the records side by side. I could have canceled the cruise that afternoon. The cabins, the dining package, and the flights were all under an account I controlled. Trent expected anger. He expected me either to surrender or destroy the vacation and give him another example of an unstable old man acting out of spite. I did neither. Trent had expected a rescue from me for most of his adult life. I had paid rent when an early business failed and cleared a tax debt he promised was temporary. I told myself each rescue gave him room to become the responsible man I knew he could be. What it had also given him was confidence that my fear of losing my son would always be stronger than my willingness to let him face a consequence. Canceling the cruise in anger would have been one more rescue. It would have brought him home before I understood what he had started, allowed him to blame the lost trip on me, and erased the contradiction between his claimed concern and his decision to sail without me. If I canceled before I understood the Harbor Grove referral, Trent would come home, change the passenger story, and explain every document as a misunderstanding. The locked manifest would show who had deliberately replaced me. Keeping the reservation intact also gave me time to find out why my son needed me to look incapable on the exact day he planned to leave town. So I left the cabins alone. I did not tell Trent I had preserved the changelog. I did not mention that Elena had recorded my refusal. I folded Nora's red scarf and placed it beside my suitcase. They had removed me from the trip because I could not be trusted. They had kept my card because my money apparently still could. Then my phone displayed a bank alert. $18,400 had just left the joint household account. Trent could still access. The destination was not the cruise line. The $18,400 had moved in two directions. One transfer went to a law firm that handled elder care and probate disputes. The other went to Shoreline Staging, Vivian's home staging company. I had kept Trent on that household account after Nora died. During my medication episode, he had helped confirm utility payments and insurance drafts. Once the prescription problem was corrected, I changed my online password but never removed his authority. I thought access used in one difficult week would remain family help. Trent had treated it as permanent. I called Naomi Keene, the elder law and trust attorney Nora and I had used for years. She asked me not to accuse anyone or move money between accounts until she reviewed the records. By noon, I was sitting across from her with the cruise log, Harbor Grove confirmation, bank alert, and Nora's trust documents spread across a conference table. Naomi did not call the transfer theft. Trent had legal access to the joint account, and the purpose of the law firm retainer was not yet confirmed. She simply placed the two payments beside the Harbor Grove referral. Your son is paying for legal help and his wife's business at the same time they are documenting concern about your capacity, she said. That creates a conflict we need to understand. She opened Nora's education trust. The fund held approximately $620,000 for Leah's university education, vocational training, medical needs, and housing connected to school. I was the current trustee. Trent was named to succeed me if I died, or if I was formally determined unable to manage the responsibility. For 17 years, I had thought of that clause as ordinary planning. Now it looked like a door. Naomi removed a letter Nora had placed with the original trust papers. I had read it before, but one paragraph landed differently that day. Help Trent when he falls, Graham. Just do not build him a life where falling is the only way he knows how to reach you. I had treated those words as advice about discipline. Nora had written them as a warning about access. She loved our son without assuming love, made him the right person to control what belonged to Leah. The trust was not simply $620,000. It was Nora's final boundary, created by someone who knew she would not be present to enforce it herself. Are they trying to take everything? I asked. They do not need everything, Naomi said. They are seeking enough temporary control over your care and finances to challenge every decision you make and replace you as trustee. Once that happens, every objection can be described as another symptom. The legal explanation lasted less than a minute. The consequence was simple. If Trent could make me look incapable, he could move closer to the money Nora had placed beyond Leah's parents until she needed it. My phone rang before Naomi finished copying the documents. It was Leah. Grandpa, are you losing your memory? There was no greeting. Her voice sounded small and embarrassed, as if someone had made her responsible for asking. I had a medication reaction 6 months ago. You know that. Mom says it's getting worse. She sent me something to sign. Vivian had drafted a family welfare statement. Leah sent me a screenshot without my asking. It claimed I had forgotten relatives' names, become lost while driving, handled money unpredictably, and grown too unstable to travel. Some facts had recognizable shadows. I had called Leah by Nora's name during the medication episode. I had driven to the old pharmacy. I had missed 2 appointments after entering them on the wrong calendar. The statement removed the dates, the medical correction, and everything that happened afterward. Naomi placed the screenshot beside the intake summary Harbor Grove had released after verifying my identity. Both used the same phrase, isolated, grieving, and increasingly confused. Did you write any of this? I asked. No. Mom said I only had to sign because I see you more than they do. Do not sign it. Do you want me to record them talking about it? No. I do not want you investigating your parents for me. Keep the screenshot you already have and go stay with your aunt until the cruise leaves. I will handle the adults. Leah was quiet. Dad said you might not remember agreeing later. That sentence hurt more than the passenger change. Trent was teaching his daughter that anything I denied could be dismissed in advance. You do not have to decide whether your father or I am telling the truth, I said. You only have to refuse to put your name beneath words you did not write. My first instinct had been to ask Leah what else her parents had said and whether she could prove it. That instinct frightened me. Trent and Vivian were already turning her private memories into evidence. If I responded by recruiting her for my side, I would protect the trust by violating the reason Nora created it. Leah was the person to be protected, not the weapon that made my defense easier. Before ending the call, I asked whether she felt safe going to her aunt's house. She said she did. I told her she could contact Naomi directly if anyone pressured her to sign, but she did not owe either side an investigation, a recording, or a statement. Naomi found the public lien records for Shoreline Staging that afternoon. Vivian's company carried obligations of approximately $460,000. The lien did not prove she wanted Leah's trust, but it established a financial conflict that had no place near a request for control over my money. Naomi arranged an independent appointment with Dr. Aaron Patel, a geriatric physician who had never treated me or met my family. Harbor Grove received written notice that I had not consented to its transport or evaluation. Elena confirmed the morning pickup was cancelled and the original intake log would remain preserved. Vivian called as soon as Trent learned Naomi was involved. You are making this much more difficult than it needs to be, she said. You sent my granddaughter a statement to sign. We asked her to describe what she has seen. You wrote the description. A grieving man living alone with that much money is a risk to himself. Then why was your first solution to move his money closer to you? She ended the call after telling me Trent would come over before the cruise so we could solve the matter as a family. 2 nights before sailing, Trent and Vivian arrived with a leather folder. Naomi sat beside me at the dining table. Nora's red scarf rested over the back of the empty chair across from us. I gave Trent one final route away from what he had suggested. I will complete an independent evaluation. You will return the $18,400, withdraw the Harbor Grove referral, and stop any filing. After that, we can discuss the cruise and the estate. Trent looked at Vivian before answering. We brought a simpler solution. Inside the folder was a power of attorney already filled with my name. They described it as temporary help while I recovered. The document gave Trent broad authority over accounts. Bills, property transactions, and access to financial records. Naomi turned to the termination section. There is no automatic expiration date, she said. This does not help with one appointment or one bill. It changes who can act in your name until you revoke it, or another authority intervenes. The word temporary had never appeared in the document. It existed only in the explanation they wanted me to trust. Sign tonight, Vivian said. Then no court has to become involved. You prepared this before asking whether I needed help. Your refusal is exactly the lack of insight we are worried about. I looked at Trent. Did you change my cabin? Yes. Did you schedule Harbor Grove? He glanced toward the scarf and then away. Yes. Did you authorize the money leaving the account? Everything is staying in the family. I never said the family could begin spending it while I was still alive. I pushed the unsigned document back. Trent had sat beside Vivian through every question. He had not been dragged into her plan. He had changed the booking, scheduled the evaluation, authorized the transfer, and brought the document himself. Naomi had already notified their attorney that she represented me. After they left, her phone displayed an electronic court notice. Their attorney had filed an emergency petition and obtained an expedited review for the morning after the ship left port. Vivian had written the story. My son was the one willing to sign his name beneath it. Dr. Aaron Patel did not ask me to count backward for an hour. or identify pictures of animals. He sat across from me in a quiet office and asked questions that belonged to my actual life. What did I own? Who depended on the trust? What would happen if I moved the money? Why had I refused the power of attorney Trent brought me? What did I believe the court petition was trying to accomplish? I told him about the house, my retirement accounts, the joint household account, and the $620,000 Nora and I had set aside for Leah. I explained that the cruise cabins were already paid, but meals outside the package, drinks, excursions, gratuities, and purchases aboard the ship would need an active payment method. I told him I had refused the power of attorney because it did not expire when the supposed emergency ended. It would have let Trent act across almost every part of my financial life. Then Dr. Patel asked about the episode. Trent and Vivian kept calling proof. I described the medication change after Nora died. I had taken a new sleep prescription alongside an older pain medication and spent one confused night in a hospital. The discharge note said the symptoms had resolved after the combination was stopped. Dr. Patel reviewed those records. He also reviewed my current medication list and the documents Naomi had given me. At the end, he folded his hands. "Grief can alter a life," he said. "It does not automatically remove the person living it." His written evaluation said I understood my assets, my beneficiaries, my choices, and the likely consequences of those choices. The old episode was consistent with the medication interaction. He found no current evidence that I lacked capacity. Naomi read the report twice. "This helps us answer the petition," she said. "It does not make the trust safe forever." She was right. I was 69. A clean evaluation that morning could not promise I would never suffer a stroke, an accident, or a real decline. If that happened while the trust still named Trent as successor trustee upon my incapacity, Vivian would have another opening. Naomi placed a second document beside Dr. Patel's report. It transferred administration of Nora's education trust to a regulated corporate trustee. Distributions would follow the standards Nora and I had written. Tuition, approved education costs, and the limited milestones we had selected for Leah would remain intact. Neither Trent nor Vivian could direct the money. Neither could I. That last part stopped me. Nora had trusted me with the fund. Her name was on every page. Giving up control felt like admitting I could no longer keep a promise she had placed in my hands. I took her red wool scarf from my coat pocket. I had carried it to the appointment because the scent of her perfume was almost gone, and I was afraid that leaving it in a drawer would make it disappear faster. Then I remembered the sentence from her letter. "Do not build Trent a life where falling is the only way he knows how to reach you." I had been so determined not to abandon my son that I had confused access with love. I could keep control and risk losing the fund, or give up control and make sure no one in the family could reach it, including me. I signed the pen made less noise than the coffee machine in Naomi's lobby. Still, I heard the scratch of my name as if a door were closing. Under the amended terms, I could not remove the corporate trustee merely because I changed my mind. A replacement would require an independent trust protector, or a court finding that the company had failed its duty. Naomi had made that restriction clear before I signed. I was not creating another secret lever for myself. I was surrendering the lever. Naomi sent the executed transfer to the corporate trustee and obtained written acceptance. The money had not moved out of the trust. The person controlling it had changed. For the first time since Nora died, I was no longer the one guarding what we had built for Leah. It hurt. It also meant Trent could not inherit the key by declaring that I had dropped it. On the morning the ship was scheduled to leave, a white Harbor Grove van turned into my driveway. The clinical intake had been cancelled. The transport contractor's overnight dispatch list had not been updated. I did not step inside the van or argue with the driver. I called Elena Park while I stood on my front walk. She confirmed that Harbor Grove had no consent from me, no clinical finding of incapacity, and no authority to transport me. She spoke to the dispatcher, logged my direct refusal, and sent Naomi a written incident note. The van left empty. Leah was already safe at her aunt's house. I did not tell her to watch the port, call her parents, or collect anything for me. That afternoon, I stood at a public overlook above the terminal, with Nora's scarf around my neck. Below me, passengers moved through security in bright jackets and new shoes. I saw Trent pulling 2 suitcases. Vivian walked ahead of him with her mother. Her younger brother followed, looking down at his phone. They boarded the Alaska cruise I had bought to honor my wife, using the cabins from which they had removed me and Leah. For months, I had pictured Nora beside me at the rail, wrapped in that red scarf while the mountains rose beyond the water. Now the scarf was with me, and her empty place was sailing away below. I did nothing to stop them. At 4:17, Trent sent a message. "Thank you for finally understanding." I waited until the scheduled passenger cutoff. Then I called the cruise line supervisor who had preserved the booking trail. She confirmed that the manifest was locked. She removed my card from the onboard folio. She confirmed that the prepaid cabins remained valid and that no new charges could be placed against my account. Naomi notified the bank that Trent's authority on the joint household account was revoked. She confirmed that the trust transfer had been accepted. Any communication about my finances would now go through her office. No one was trapped. They had their own cards. They could contact their attorney. They could leave at a port if they chose. What they no longer had was my money quietly following them. Vivian's first message arrived before the ship cleared the harbor. "Your card is gone from the account. They are asking us for another one. Fix this now," I answered once. "The cabins are paid. Everything else belongs to the people using it." Then I turned off message previews. As the ship moved past the breakwater, Naomi called. The filing notice from the night before had become a complete set of service papers. Trent and Vivian's attorney had asked for temporary authority over my finances, while the court considered whether I was capable of managing them. The judge had not granted it. The court had ordered the existing financial arrangements to remain in place and scheduled an expedited review for the next morning. Trent could not gain new control before the hearing. He had also lost the access he once had because I had revoked it while I was still legally entitled to do so. Naomi sent me the petition. I read the sentences Trent had signed. It said I had become isolated, unpredictable, and financially reckless. It described my refusal of Harbor Grove as evidence that I lacked insight into my condition. An attachment listed the assets they claimed needed protection. Near the bottom was Nora's education trust, described as money that should be preserved for family continuity. Not for Leah's education, for family continuity. The petition did not mention that Trent had changed the cruise manifest. It did not mention that he had boarded a 7-day voyage hours after claiming his father required immediate supervision. The locked manifest now showed exactly where he had chosen to be during the emergency he described to the court. Naomi said the records were strong. Dr. Patel's evaluation answered the capacity claim. Elena's note answered the invented medical urgency. The banking trail, booking log, and trust documents answered the rest. Then her voice changed. "Leah saw Vivian drafting the welfare statement," she said. "An affidavit from her would make this easier. Probably faster." I looked at the ship becoming smaller against the gray water. Leah was 17. She had already learned that her parents could turn concern into a weapon. I would not teach her that I could do the same thing. "Then find a slower way," I said. "The hearing could cost more. It could take longer. Trent might tell worse lies before it ended. But Leah would not become the main witness in a war between the people who were supposed to protect her." The next morning, I sat beside Naomi in a courthouse room while the ship carrying my son moved farther north. Trent and Vivian did not appear. Their attorney joined by video and said their absence did not reduce the danger. According To him, my refusal to accept help showed how isolated and unpredictable I had become. Naomi did not answer with a speech. She handed the judge the passenger manifest. It showed that Trent had removed me and Leah from the cruise I purchased. It showed that Vivian's mother and brother had taken our places. It also showed that Trent and Vivian boarded ours after asking a court to believe I needed immediate supervision. The isolation in their petition had not happened because I withdrew from my family. They had removed me, then sailed away. Naomi produced Elena Park's intake log next. Trent had placed the Harbor Grove referral. I had never consented to an intake or transport. The pickup had been arranged for the same morning the cruise departed. Elena's incident note confirmed that the contractor's van arrived after the clinical intake was cancelled and left when I directly refused transport. Their attorney returned to my hospital episode after Nora died. Naomi gave the judge Dr. Patel's evaluation and the discharge records. One documented a resolved medication interaction. The other showed that I currently understood my property, the people affected by my decisions, and the consequences of the documents I had signed. Grief was not proof of incapacity. Then Naomi placed 3 pages side by side. The Harbor Grove summary, the welfare statement Vivian had drafted, and the petition Trent had signed all used the same description. We submitted no affidavit from Leah. Isolated, grieving, and increasingly confused, they were not 3 independent warnings. They were one story repeated through 3 different doors. The financial records supplied the reason for caution. $18,400 had left an account Trent could access. Part went to the attorneys pursuing control over me. Part went to Shoreline Staging, while Vivian's business carried roughly $460,000 in obligations. Trent had brought me a broad power of attorney, and the old trust documents had once named him to succeed me if I became incapacitated. Naomi did not ask the judge to declare either of them a criminal. She asked whether those conflicts justified giving them more control before the facts could be tested. The judge asked me why I had transferred the trust if I believed I was capable of managing it. I said capability was not the same as certainty. I understood what I was giving up. A corporate trustee would protect Leah if I became genuinely ill years later, just as it protected her from a false emergency now. I had surrendered my own control because leaving the money within reach of any family successor had become the greater risk. The judge looked at Dr. Patel's report, then at the trustee's written acceptance. The safeguard did not depend on anyone pretending I would remain healthy forever. The answer was no. The judge denied emergency relief. The order said the evidence did not support immediate control over my finances or personal decisions. It also noted that less restrictive safeguards were already in place. I had independent counsel. My bank access had been secured. A corporate trustee now protected Leah's education fund. I walked out with my autonomy intact. I did not feel victorious. My son was still on the ship I had bought to remember my wife, and the order in my hand could not restore the person I had believed him to be. 7 days later, Trent and Vivian came to my house. Naomi was with me at the dining table. Nora's red scarf rested over the back of the empty chair beside mine. I gave Trent a copy of the court order, the bank notice removing his access, and confirmation that no member of our family controlled Leah's trust. Naomi gave him a demand for repayment of the $18,400. I also told him my estate plan had been updated. He no longer held any successor financial authority that I had the power to remove. Vivian looked at the papers, then at me. This is revenge because we took the cruise. I did not answer her. I looked at Trent, who placed the memory care referral. He pressed his lips together. Whose name was on the financial contact line? He looked toward Vivian, but I did not. Who changed my cabin? Vivian handled the booking, he said. With your account. His eyes dropped to the documents. Who scheduled a van to collect me while you boarded the ship? Who kept access to my bank account? Who brought the power of attorney? Who signed the petition? You had already been confused once, Trent said. After Mom died, you stopped sleeping. You forgot conversations. Then you started shutting us out. What was I supposed to think? For a moment, I heard the frightened son beneath the prepared phrases. There had been a night when he sat beside my hospital bed and watched me struggle to remember why I was there. I would never tell him that fear had been imaginary. But fear had not changed my cruise booking. Fear had not sent money to Vivian's company. Fear had not required a power of attorney with no automatic end. You could have called my doctor, I said. You could have asked for an evaluation with me present. You scheduled a facility, changed my cabin, and signed for control before anyone examined me. He looked down again. He could not pass any of those answers across the table to his wife. Vivian designed the story, I said. Every institution believed it because my son signed his name beneath it. He finally looked at me. I'm your son. You did not lose access because you stopped being my son. You lost it because being my son was the access you used against me. Vivian pushed the repayment demand away. You planned this. You waited until we were on the ship where we could not respond. They had been able to call their lawyer, use other cards, and leave at a port. Their attorney had appeared at the hearing. No one had held them anywhere. But I still answered Trent, not her. Do you want to know why I did not cancel the cruise? He said nothing. Because if you truly believed I was in immediate danger, you would not have left me for 7 days. The room went quiet. I told him the locked manifest had preserved what he did. His absence had answered the claim that I required immediate family supervision. Letting them board had also moved Leah away from the pressure, while Naomi and I secured the trust. Most of all, it gave Trent the freedom to choose between the emergency he described and the vacation he wanted. He chose the ship. Vivian stood so quickly that her chair struck the wall. You trapped us. I left every decision in your hands. You made each one. Trent stared at Nora's scarf. You are destroying this family over money. That sentence hurt because part of it was true. Money had been standing between us for years. I had simply kept placing it there and calling the barrier support. I paid for the cruise, I said. I paid your tax debt. I paid your rent when the business failed. I paid because every time you faced a consequence, I was afraid it would cost me my son. His voice softened. And now I know paying was how I taught you that my love had no boundary. I told him what would not happen. I would not pay their business debts. I would not restore his account access. I would not make him trustee again. I would not ask Leah to carry messages between us or defend either side. The demand required a documented repayment schedule, not a performance that night. I was not erasing him from my life. If he wanted to call me as my son, I would listen. If he wanted to rebuild something that did not depend on my assets, the door was not locked. But love would no longer arrive as a transfer, a signature, or a rescue from the consequence of his own decision. Trent gathered the papers. At the doorway, he turned as if he wanted to say something. Then Vivian called his name, and he followed her outside. 6 months later, Leah and I stood at the rail of a ship heading through Alaska's Inside Passage. We had booked 2 ordinary cabins. There were no upgrades and no family substitutions. Leah wore Nora's red scarf, and I carried the photograph we had once planned to place between us at the rail. The morning was cold enough to sting my fingers. Low clouds rested on dark water, and the mountains looked close enough to touch. Leah set Nora's photograph against the glass. In it, Nora was laughing into the wind on an ordinary winter beach. She had never needed a grand view to make a place matter. She only needed the people beside her to understand why they were there. A whale surfaced beyond the ship, rolled once through the gray, and disappeared. Leah reached for my hand without looking away. Do you regret letting them take the first trip? She asked. I regret who they became on the way there. I do not regret learning before they reached what your grandmother left you. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a message from Trent. He said he had started making monthly repayments. Then he asked whether we could talk when I returned. I did not delete it. I did not answer immediately either. I put the phone back in my pocket and stood beside Leah while the ship carried us north. Nora had wanted Alaska to be a place where our family remembered what still belonged to us. Trent believed that meant cabins, accounts, and a fund with his name waiting somewhere in the paperwork. Nora had meant something smaller and harder to inherit. She had meant trust. I could not give that back to my son. But I could finally stop paying him to pretend it was still there. If you had been in my place, would you have let them board? Tell me what you would have done.